Holy words long reserved for our walk in this world. They resound with God's own heart. Oh, let the ancient words impart. Words of life, words of hope, give us strength, help us cope. In this world, where'er we roam, ancient words will guide us home. Ancient words ever true, changing me and changing you. We have come with open hearts. Oh, let the ancient words impart. Holy words of our faith, handed down to this age, come to us through sacrifice. Oh, heed the faithful word of Christ. Holy words long preserved for our walk in this world. They resound with God's own heart. Oh, let the ancient words impart. Ancient words ever true, changing me and changing you. We have come with open hearts. Oh, let the ancient words impart. Ancient words ever true, changing me and changing you. We have come with open hearts. Oh, let the ancient words impart. Ancient words ever true, changing me and changing you. We have come with open hearts. Oh, let the ancient words impart. We have come with open hearts. Oh, let the ancient words impart.
And good afternoon. Welcome to Searching for the Truth. It is a beautiful Friday afternoon here in Central Arkansas. I hope that everyone has had a great day so far. So glad to have you with us. Bernice has chimed in this afternoon. Great to have you. Appreciate very much the opportunity to be with you today. James Hamilton has also joined us today, and looking forward to today's Bible study. James, how are you?
I'm doing all right. Thanks to the Lord.
So good to have you as always. And today, actually, I was kind of struggling. I was going to begin a study because I got a question that was sent in earlier in the week about evidences, about how do you prove that we did not come from monkeys? Well, I've been thinking about doing a series of lessons and talk about evolution, those kinds of things. I've been preaching a series here on Sunday evenings having to do with apologetics. We've talked about the most reasonable cause for the universe as it exists, the most reasonable cause for the earth, the most reasonable cause for life and its complexities. So we've been talking about those things. Right now we're talking about the most reasonable cause for the Bible. And so those kind of feed off of each other. And I've been thinking about doing that here so we can have some discussion regarding those things. So that's kind of where I was leaning. And then Lee sent me a text message and wanted to know if I had decided yet. And I hadn't, but he suggested arrogance, pride, ego, those kinds of issues and problems. So that's kind of where we'll go today. We'll talk about attitudes and the kind of attitudes that we must have as Christians. And hope that you can stick around and hope that you'll have an attitude in which you're willing to accept whatever the truth is. That's what humility will do. It'll seek for truth, and it'll desire the truth, and it will accept the truth. So that's why humility is such a key. We're going to be looking at Matthew chapter 5. We could look at Hebrews too, but Matthew chapter 5 in particular, verses 3 through 13. Okay, I don't know of a better place to go than there to talk about attitudes, and specifically honing in on the problem of pride and arrogance, in contrast with the attitude that we must have if we're going to be pleasing to God. So that is where we're going, Lord willing. How important is attitude when it comes to our service to God? That's a question I'm going to throw out. How important is it?
That's the most important thing, really.
Huh? Yeah, even Carl has made that point, many times. It's about our attitude. That's what God wants. He wants our hearts.
Yeah.
Right.
And fundamental to that, the first step, and this is getting to Matthew 5:3, is humility.
Mm-hmm.
And Matthew is divided up into narrative and discourse cycles, and of course, first 4 chapters is introducing the King of the Kingdom, Jesus, and then the discourse is the Sermon on the Mount, which is introducing the citizen of the kingdom of heaven. What kind of person is the citizen of the kingdom of heaven? And the first step is humility. And he does that again in chapter 18 with that discourse.
Sure.
Humility.
I have argued many times, not really argued, I pointed out many times. Matthew 5 and verse 3, blessed are the poor in spirit, is not by random chance. I mean, that is their number one in Jesus's list for a reason.
Yeah, it's the first step.
It is the primary, fundamental, foundational step.
Yeah, because the first thing you have to realize is your need for God in order to draw near to Him in the right way.
So having being poverty of spirit, that is, you're not haughty, you're not proud, you're not arrogant, you're humble, you're genuine, you're sincere in seeking God. You recognize your need for Him. So those are the kinds of things that we're going to be talking about this afternoon. When it comes to attitude, let's just talk about the concept for just a second. According to a Stanford Research Institute report, it shows that only 12.5% of our success in life is determined by knowledge. The other 87.5% comes from attitude. More than skill, more than knowledge, more than aptitude, our attitude dictates our success in life. You can be the smartest person in the room, but if you're proud, you're arrogant, what effect is that going to have on your intelligence and your knowledge?
Well, it will limit it, because if you have a specific opinion about something, you're going to be closed-minded to adding more new information that may be very helpful.
And how's that going to affect your association relationship with other people?
Well, that's the biggest impact that it's going to have. It's going to affect it in a destructive way, usually. Not just negative, but destructive way.
And I do want to emphasize, we're not trying to ascertain what kind of positive mental attitude we should have. Always keep things upbeat and positive, right? Just be happy. Just be happy. That's not where we're going with this. That's not the point. Okay. We do need to have balance. We need information. We need to be informed. We want to have a godly approach to life. By the way, if I were to define for you godliness, this is how I would do it. Godliness, an attitude that is bent towards pleasing God. It is an attitude that desires to serve and to please Almighty God. That's what godliness is. Okay. So,
Well, there are steps that lead to that, and that's one of all the Beatitudes in order are significant.
sure. Absolutely. Lee says, I recently came across a Bruce Reeves article on pride. So my comment is coming from that article. Don't read Bruce Reeves stuff, man. Don't do that. One red flag of pride in preachers is that of self-promotion. When our goal is the advancement of our own personal agenda, notoriety, and objectives, rather than the advancement of the message of the gospel and the well-being of God's people, then there is a definite problem in our thinking. Okay. That's a good point that Bruce is making. Now, certainly we should advance the gospel, right? We should be putting the gospel out there. We should be wanting people to study with us and to consider the teaching of Scripture.
Yeah, well, the gospel, not our own ideas.
Exactly.
But the gospel,
we want
not
to
our
advance
wisdom.
the gospel. But it's not about advancing me. It's not about having the biggest and the best and the brightest so that people will think that I am the biggest, the best, and the brightest. It's not about me. It's kind of funny. You tie Bruce Reeves into that comment. And it's kind of a running joke, I guess, among me and Tyler Sams and Sean Chancellor were here earlier this week, and we were going over some debate stuff, and one of the things that, it's all about Bruce, right? It's all about Bruce. It's not all about Bruce. Bruce is a humble guy. But, that was kind of the thing, we got to make Bruce happy. We got to keep, because we're the help. That's what we are. we do what we're told to do. And if the debate's going to function properly, work right, then we do what we're told to do. And so far it's worked out well. Bruce is not doing it because he's proud. He wants to defend the truth. Be careful, is that envy I hear? Yeah. Well, no, but I get the point. We should never be trying to advance ourselves. And a lot of people that they have this particular idea that they're kind of hung up on, right? And it's their hobby horse, and they think they've got it all figured out. They've got all the answers, and they keep pushing that, and they push that, and they push that. And that's all they ever want to talk about. And they demand that people agree with them. They just insist that people see it their way, and they just keep on, and they won't listen to you as you. Well, no, that's not right. They reject.
That's their area of expertise, they think, and
that's exactly what
they become
think.
Specialists in certain aspects of the Bible or whatever.
Brethren like that, and they want to. That's all they seem to ever want to talk about, and sometimes
they're blind to the fact that that's what they've done.
Mm-hmm.
I think in some cases, but
and they just cannot understand why people don't see it their way. Well, if they're wrong, what? Wednesday afternoon, I had the hiccups. I still do. I still have them. I haven't gotten over them. They kind of come and go, but I still have them. So good comment, and let's keep that going. All right. If you have a question or comment, let us hear from you. You can give us a call at 1-855-568-1062, or you can text your comment into the chat section, just like Jeremy did. And he says, I'm off work sick. Well, I hope you get to feeling better. So I'm available for once. I don't want to sidetrack your topic if that is your priority, but I can call in if you want me to. That seemed to be really important to a couple people in this group, so here I am. But again, I know you guys had a plan today, so I'd understand if you wanted to stay on topic. It's your party, and you should do what your preference is. And it's my party, and I'll cry if I want to. I guess. No, it's not my party. It's actually our party, and that's one of the things that we do want to do is talk about the things that you guys want to talk about. Um, Lee says, "Get off the plane and have him call." Well, Lee is the one who wanted to talk about pride and arrogance and ego, and I don't know. And he gave us a little hint about why he brought that up. There was a statement that he read in an article by Bruce Reeves, and I do think that's very, very important. But you are welcome to call, Jeremy. I guess if you're sick, I know if I was sick, I probably wouldn't feel like calling in. And I know it's been a while probably since we've talked about some of the things that we have discussed, but you're welcome to call 1-855-568-1062. In the meantime, in Ephesians chapter 4, I just like to start there. You know, Paul says, therefore, and testify in the Lord that you should no longer walk as the rest of the Gentiles walk in the futility of their mind, having their understanding darkened, being alienated from the life of God because of the ignorance that is in them, because of the blindness of their heart, who being past feeling have given themselves over to lewdness, to work all uncleanness with greediness. But you have not so learned Christ. You see, here's an interesting point. We have learned Christ. Christ is to be the center of now our life and our thought and our goal. We are to be imitators of Christ.
Have the same attitudes he had.
Sure.
React to situations when we're in similar situations. We need to react as he reacted.
He is our example.
Have the same motives as he had.
Mm-hmm. And so notice it says, but you have not so learned Christ, if indeed you have heard him and have been taught by him, as the truth is in Jesus. You know, these Christians had heard, they had been taught. And so we have not only what they were taught, but also how they received that teaching and how they lived according to that teaching. But the key being, okay, Jesus is the teacher. Jesus is the master, the Lord. He is the one that we are to follow. Okay. And he says, be renewed in the spirit of your mind. The spirit of your mind, our attitude, our disposition. So our knowledge, okay, how important is knowledge? Hosea 4 and verse 6, my people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. Knowledge is very important.
Well, and Paul prayed would be filled with the knowledge of his will in Colossians 1:9, but it goes on to say, with all spiritual wisdom and understanding. You know, so so that we can apply it to our lives, and then we increase in the knowledge of God himself.
Mm-hmm. And that you put on the new man that was created according to God in true holiness and in true righteousness and holiness. Therefore, and then he lists some things. Okay.
Stop doing what you were doing. Start doing something like Jesus would.
Mm-hmm. Jesus doesn't lie, but stop lying. Put away lying. Notice, speak truth with one another. Speak truth with your neighbor. We are members of one another. We're to be honest with one another.
Yeah.
Listen, hey, let me give you a tip though when it comes to honesty. Honesty and striving to be honest does not give you the right to hurt somebody.
No, we're to be motivated by. We need to be motivated by love.
Yeah.
And love is first of all kind, and it's long suffering. And if you're really bothered by something, you do need to talk to your brother about it. That's being honest, but you need to do it in a considerate way. You do it the way you would want to be approached if somebody were to be bothered by something you're doing. And so we have to be careful, not walking on eggshells with one another, but be open and honest and willing to listen as well as to be honest and speak the truth. We need to be willing to listen as well, be swift to hear.
Well, speaking truthfully with one another does not necessarily doesn't. In fact, many of the things
it's better than holding a resentment, and let
very
it
true. But
build up.
being truthful with one another does not mean that we have to hurt somebody else's feelings. That we do have to be rude. No, we don't. We never. There's never an excuse or a reason to be rude, obnoxious, arrogant, proud.
Well, even if they're overtaken in a fault or in sin, as Galatians 6 talks about, we're to restore them in a spirit of gentleness, in a spiritual manner, with a spiritual motive, as well as considering ourselves. And that's part of the humility, that consider ourselves, lest we also be
and we're
tempted.
thinking about what's best for that other person.
Yeah.
Okay.
And thinking about how best to reach them has to be our way of approaching them, is going to be that consideration first.
Be angry and do not sin. Okay. So Paul is talking about things that we're not to do, but okay, is it a sin to be angry? Kind of goes back to Wednesday.
Not necessarily.
I think that there are a lot of Christians who don't understand what sin is. To be honest with you, they just don't know. It's not a sin just to be angry. Okay, we can be angry and not sin. Now we can also be angry and sin.
Mm-hmm.
So be angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your wrath. In other words, don't hold on to it, because that's going to turn into bitterness. It's something that needs to be dealt with. Okay, you do need to deal with your anger, and you need to deal with it righteously. And sometimes dealing with righteous anger, dealing with it, the indignation that's in us, will result to us exhibiting that anger, like Jesus in John 2. Righteous zeal, the zeal of my house hath eaten me up.
Well, he was slow to anger, though.
He took the time to make that whip of cords.
But when people have that kind of right motive about it, they're going to be slow to anger, like God is. But once it's just too much to remain silent about it, they're going to lower the boom, and that's the way God is when it comes to expressing His anger. You don't just presume upon the long suffering of God.
I don't want to get hung up on all these things. Don't give place to the devil, etc. Let him who stole steal no longer, etc. So let's see. Is this? Yes, thank you for calling Searching for the Truth. You are on the air.
Howdy.
You are live.
Jeremy.
Yes, Jeremy. How you doing?
Yes.
What's on your mind today?
Well, something you said early caught my attention. The idea of hobby horses, people talking about one thing only and going on. The only thing I particularly will push until I die, there's a weird idea in the church that lying is, or at least can be, okay. That's a hill I'll die on, and I will discuss until I'm red in the face. It's one of the weirdest, most undermining, destructive teachings in the church today. I just called for what's on other people's minds. So if other people have questions, or you have questions to me about topics we've discussed before, I'm happy to discuss them now.
Okay. I'd be honest with you, those things weren't on my mind, haven't been on my mind, and I don't know where to go with those things right off the top of my head. But you bring up an interesting question and thought regarding lying. That's something that's kind of I've thought about too, and talked about in the past. Is lying always sinful? Your answer is yes, right?
Yes, my answer is yes. So an objection that people often bring up is the Rahab example or the midwives, right. And I have answers to that. But yes, I believe lying is always sinful.
Okay, so before you go any further, okay, I agree with you. Lying is always sinful. Let me give you another example. Murder is always sinful.
Yes, I don't think so. One of the arguments I've heard pervade in some of these groups, not your group specifically, thankfully, but in many of the groups, is the idea that the list of unrighteous behaviors that you see in a couple different places in the Bible, those are characterizations. They're not absolutes. And I guess you could make that argument, but you would have to find some example, I would think, of any of those things ever being okay, or an action that perhaps seems like one of those things being defined away into not being one of those things. So say statement X or Y that looks like lying isn't lying because of this technicality or something like that. But I've never seen any kind of argument that that remotely substantiates that. The most common ones, as I said, are Rahab and the midwives, but those don't satisfy it, in my opinion. I can go into it if you want, but there's no example of lying in the Bible I've ever seen that has been condoned.
Okay, and I agree with you. Okay, would you say that Rahab was justified in what she did in concealing the spies?
She was justified in what she did, but an important distinction between being justified and what they're talking about is they're saying she was commended for lying, whereas she was never commended specifically for lying. She was commended for hiding them. And hiding them and anything she said were two distinct acts, I would say. But also, no lie was ever recorded in the account. Now, they will say, well, she knew where they were, and therefore, when she says, I know not where they've gone, or however your version reads, she was lying. And I would say, well, no, unless her roof is in her house and she can see them. Anyone who's had children, and I believe from the pictures I've seen on your profile, you have some children. Anyone who's had children, as soon as you put them in bed and close the door, you have no earthly idea where they are. And that doesn't cease applying simply because they're adults. Yes, she hid them on the roof, but they could have fled in fear. They could have thought they had a better idea. Who knows? The point is, she was saying something she knew would be interpreted a particular way, and she went with that. That is not necessarily lying. Some people hold that all deception is lying. That's not true. All lying is deception, but not all deception is lying. Otherwise, God specifically told someone to lie. I'm sure you're familiar with the heifer story. The entire point of that story is, go do something else. Say you're there to do that so you won't be murdered. And that was deceptive, but it was not lying, unless you're willing to say that God commands lies, which is crazy.
So, okay, so before you go any further, just for clarification, I mean, I'm not disagreeing with anything you've said so far. I think it's important that we define lying correctly, from a biblical perspective. What is a lie? And your suggestion that all lying is deceptive, but not all deception is lying.
Correct.
I see that kind of like all murder is killing, but not all killing is murder.
That is a perfect allegory.
And that's the, there has to be an intent. I mean, murder is the unlawful taking of an innocent person's life. Mm-hmm. It requires planning. It requires action that, you're doing that which God, without exception, forbids. It is always a sin to commit murder.
Well, there's a clear distinction made in 2 Samuel with Joab avenging his brother's death. His brother was honorably killed by Abner. Abishai was chasing him, and he warned him several times to stop chasing him, and he wouldn't, and so he just stopped and put his spear handle to where Abishai would run right through it, and it ran right through him, actually, because he was the fastest guy. But his death was an honorable death. Abner did not commit murder. Death in the context of war is not the same as murder. But Joab avenged his brother's death in a dishonorable way of shedding blood. That is committing murder, shedding innocent blood. And so that's the distinction. And I agree with the example in 1 Samuel 16 you're talking about where God told him to make that sacrifice in Bethlehem. And if anybody asks him, you say, well, he's going to make that sacrifice. That's what he was told to do. I have no problem with that at all. I mean, that's not God telling Samuel to lie. So we're not obligated to give every detail of everything we're doing to somebody just because they ask either.
Yes, and is the point of that is what made it not a lie was that he did it.
Yeah. He did make a sacrifice. It wasn't that he was just taking the heifer to claim that he's going to, but it was a sacrifice. It was a peace offering.
It was just it was the truth.
Shared by the
whole truth.
The village. Yeah.
It wasn't all truth.
He left out the detail that he's going to anoint
on purpose
Saul's replacement. Yeah, he would have been killed for that, for treason. Yeah. Had he?
Yes, exactly. And the important thing is, there's this, and I'm sorry if I'm cutting people off. It's really hard to hear here, but there's this idea that you can lie by telling completely the truth, and that's just not the case.
By telling the complete truth, you will be lying?
Yes, there are people who say that if you tell the truth and you tell it in such a way so that you know that someone will misinterpret it, that is a lie. And they don't back off of that when I bring up the Samuel example. And so there is a strain of Christianity who believes that God condoned lying, that lying is okay and permissible if there is a so-called greater good that is served by the quote-unquote putative lie. And I want to say one other thing before I get lost in kind of the echo that I'm hearing here. Don made another good point about the definition of lying and murder, including intent. You don't accidentally murder people. That's not how it happens. You don't accidentally lie. So another strain of professing Christian will say that if you say something false, it's a lie. And so even if you believe it's true at the time, that's not how it works. If you are in good faith believing something is true, now it's possible you can sin preceding a statement like you should have known had you done this other thing, but just to simplify it, if you honestly believe something is true and you say it as though it's true, and you're not trying to deceive anyone at all, you're simply factually incorrect, or you're simply technically incorrect. That is not a lie. All sin. Now, what I'm about to say is somewhat controversial among a lot of Christians, but I believe all sin requires some intent element. It requires some malintent of some kind. But certainly lying does. You can't lie on accident, and that's about the full boat of it. Unless we're going to discuss Rahab and the midwives more.
That sounds a lot like some of the things that I've said in the last couple of weeks when it comes to sin. Where's temptation in the process? Is there such a thing as sinning where there is no temptation? Where there is no intent, where there is no will being involved. Is there sin when there is no will being executed to do that which is wrong?
Like if someone pushed my hand holding a knife into someone else, have I sinned? Of course not.
Or hey, is all sex outside of marriage sin?
Obviously not.
Well, okay. What about fornication? Absolutely. And how many times out of 100 can a person commit fornication and not be guilty of sin? 0. Fornication is sinful 100% of the time.
Correct, but fornication requires intent, whereas some sort of unfortunate circumstance involving a minor does not.
Exactly. What rate? Minors? Exactly. That's an excellent point. I think we're on the same wavelength on that.
Well, I think that I bored Lee Elkins by agreeing with you.
Let's see. Well, we've had our disagreements, no doubt about that. But yeah, Lee says some reference Rahab for justification, and I think you make a good point. Rahab was not justified because of her lie, and no lying is being justified in the context. What's being justified is her faithfulness and trusting God and fearing God, because she had heard of what God had done to these other nations, and she was acting in a righteous way to preserve God's people. And she trusted God. That she knew that Jericho was going to fall. She knew that God's people were going to be victorious. She simply chose the winning side, and thus she protected the people of God.
Yes, and one thing that people push in that is, so you have the actual statements. I don't have it in front of me, but I'll try to roughly paraphrase it. She says, they went out, I don't know where they are. If you hurry, you might catch them. That's roughly what it is, depending on your version. And that's true. They did go out. They went outside on her roof. She doesn't know where they are. She's not looking at them right now, and she's been separated for some time talking to these guards. And if they did hurry, they might catch them. She doesn't know where they're going to go to hurry to catch them. She did indicate maybe they go to the gate, but that's not the point. That is no different than what was done with the heifer. It's no different at all. She said a bunch of true things, and it really misled the people because they didn't keep in mind what could still be true from what she said. They went immediately to what their focus was, and they misinterpreted it because they didn't slow down.
Yeah, the only thing it says in James 2 about Rahab being justified on the basis of an act of faith was receiving the messengers and then sending them out a different way and telling them where to hide for 3 days while they knew the people pursuing them were going to begin looking for them.
It wasn't accounted to her as righteousness that she lied her face off.
What she did was give them instructions on how to avoid being caught by those people. That's the only two things it talks about here that she did as far as her faith working in James chapter 2.
Right, and
I think
I'm
sorry. Go ahead.
Agree. Paul asked, "What is an example of deception that isn't a lie?"
Probably when
let me give you some examples.
1 Kings 22, when everybody, the false prophets of Ahab, all said, "Go to battle," because you're going to win. And so
false prophets.
And so when the Micaiah was sent, and he was coached, this is what everybody else has said, so you need to say the same thing. What should we do? Because Jehoshaphat was not going to go without advice from somebody, a prophet of the Lord, and so they got Micaiah, but he never prophesied anything good about me. So they sent for him anyway, and he was even coached what to say. Well, he got there and he says, "Yeah, go ahead. The Lord's going to reward you." But Ahab knew. He says, "All right, now you tell me the truth." and then he said, "I saw all the sheep scattered and the shepherd, it was gone." And that was, of course, Ahab would be the only one killed in the battle. And everyone goes back to their own house in peace. And that's exactly what happened. So he told the truth, but he also said something that was not true at first. But this, God sending this lying spirit to these false prophets, that's kind of like God sending a strong delusion in 2 Thessalonians 2. So some people, we find in Revelation 21, that all liars will have their part in the lake of fire, which burns fire and brimstone. But God is going to allow people to believe a lie.
So Paul asked the question, what is an example of deception that isn't a lie? Can you think of any examples of Jesus himself by not revealing an entirety of truth regarding a particular question he's asked, and he what he says actually leads people to believe something different from what his underlying meaning, but he knew that they were going to come to that conclusion?
Well, I have an example. It may not satisfy everyone, but I think a perfect example, he even says it, in my opinion, when he explains the purpose of speaking in parables. The entire point was it was given to some to understand and not given to others to understand.
Yep.
And they're going to come to some sort of conclusion, and it's going to be an erroneous conclusion, and that was by design. He literally said the parables were designed to do that.
Yes, that's right. I think that's what Don was just about. That's what he was trying to say.
That's exactly what I was trying to get you to say. So because that's exactly what I was getting at.
And
the whole purpose of parables and other examples and other statements of Jesus. When he would speak in such way, like, in 3 days, I will destroy this temple. In 3 days, build it again and raise it up. Okay. Well, he knew how they were going to interpret that. He said it anyway. And that came back, of course, as a bearing false witness regarding what he actually said that.
Yes. And even if he believed in the future, they would understand it correctly. He knew at the time they would misinterpret it.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, and Paul Paul's right in saying, could that have been sarcasm by the prophet? Talking about Micaiah, I believe it was. I think he said it that way. So
I believe that Ahab understood it that way.
Sarcasm.
Too, by the way, because
and Paul uses that in 2 Corinthians as well.
Yeah, I mean, when I read that, I can just I kind of overlay that sarcasm over what Micaiah says, because I can just hear him. Oh, you just go right on, Ahab, because God's going to give you the biggest victory ever, man. You're going to have everything you want. No questions asked. You go for it, Ahab. I could just embellishing it a little bit. I mean, I can see Micaiah doing that, but yeah, he was telling Ahab the same thing everybody else did, and that caused a red flag to go off in Ahab's mind.
I'd like to add one more point, and then stop the hijack of your lesson here. One of the most destructive ways I think this misunderstanding about lying manifests itself is in the idea of omission. And we've already talked about that with the heifer example, but a lot of people confuse the idea of honesty and forthrightness. And one of the reasons that Solomon gives for writing the parables, and again, this is very version dependent, but the idea is giving subtlety to the simple, the idea of prudence or discretion. And you don't just simply blurt out everything that a person could be talking or asking about. You give the information that is useful, if not to them, then to you or the situation generally. And so I think that people have given themselves permission to tell white lies, which often, not always, lead to much bigger lies or more destructive lies, because they don't understand the difference between honesty and forthrightness. And since they don't want to hurt somebody, they convince themselves it's okay. But that would all be fixed if we had, at least as Christians, we had honest relationships. We could trust each other, and we understood. We built an environment where we believed that, well, maybe I just misunderstood him, and then we investigated it more. Things like, we don't have trusting environments in churches, generally speaking. There are elements of trust, there are levels of trust, but people are scared of truly opening up with each other and confessing to one another. There's just not trust there. Here are my problems, A, B, and C, X, Y, and Z. And honestly, the trust is probably founded a bit, and it's hard work to build and maintain that trust. But I think that fear has led people to accept some level of lying. Now, I know I'm getting a little bit out there, but yes, there is a difference between honesty and forthrightness. It's okay to withhold information. In fact, it's often the most helpful thing to do, because sometimes people aren't ready to discuss something or aren't ready for information. And the way you can serve them is to give them an answer that's enough for the time.
Yeah.
Well, Jesus did that. He says, I have many things to tell you now, but you cannot bear them. And so later on, the Spirit would guide them into all truth.
Yes.
That's where wisdom comes in, and knowing how much to say to somebody that's going to be helpful and what they're able to handle at the time. Jesus is our example in that.
Does this dress make me look fat? If your wife asks you that question, listen.
What is it harm to say, oh, you're beautiful? Maybe she misinterprets that to mean the dress looks great on her. Yeah. But she's still beautiful. It's still a true statement. And so you've escaped.
Exactly. You be careful how you answer that question. But yeah, I got a call several years ago and this is what really got me thinking about this particular issue in question.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and drop out so I can hear the audio better. Okay, guys?
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, and hope that you get sick again soon and call back and when we can really talk about some of the things we disagreed about, and we'll do that.
Wow.
Just let me know. And
I'm just kidding. Have a good day.
All right. Thank you, Jeremy. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. So hang that up. Okay. What got me to thinking about this, and this was years ago. I got a call one day from a lady whose husband, who served in the Vietnam War and had come into contact with some Agent Orange, and it really messed him up physically, including causing extreme dementia, with all kinds of bad side effects. I mean, the guy before he got sick was one of the most wonderful people you'd ever meet. So kind, generous, faithful, devoted, all the things that you would want in a great example of a Christian. But he gets sick. And as he continues to digress mentally, he became more and more agitated and more violent. And my point would be that when he got to that point, he ceased being who he was. He's not the same person anymore. Okay. And anyway, as he continued to get worse, his wife calls and she's trying to take care of him and just looking for some advice and help. And because her conscience was really bothering her, because he would demand certain things and he would ask certain questions in which she would answer them truthfully, then he would just get irate because he wasn't living in the real world. He was living in his fantasy world, in the past, and in another world. And when she would try to correct him in his understandings, which were not correct, but she would try to correct him, he would become just completely uncontrollable. He was stronger than she was. And she said, my conscience will not allow me to lie to him. And I said, well, don't lie. Don't lie. But that doesn't mean that you have to, be argumentative or try to correct him or, let him think where he's at is where he's at. That's what is going to be best for everybody involved. That's not lying. Okay. And try to bring it try to encourage him to come to the truth, but certainly you cannot argue with someone who is unreasonable. It's impossible. Can't do it. So be considered about those things. There are some people who being reasonable and trying to discuss things with is impossible because they're not reasonable. And I got to thinking about that subject, lying. Is it really a lie to try just you and Jeremy was talking about being honest and forthright, those two different things. Can you still be honest with your husband as you're trying to help him navigate through this illness? Can you still be honest with him by allowing him to think that it's still 1959 and live in that world with him? Is that, what harm is that really doing? Is that lying? I would say absolutely not.
I mean, as far as I don't think you're any obligation to say no. It's not 1959. It's just 19 or 20, exactly. Whatever it is now.
So we lying by definition is deceiving with intent to deceive, and it's harmful. It's for my self-preservation. It protects my pride. It protects my reputation. I'm going to lie and I'm going to cover up my sin. That's wrong 100% of the time.
Or to gain something,
yes.
for yourself.
Yes.
Con men do this a lot. There's all kinds of reasons that people lie.
Paul asked about, deception. Is it a sin to be a magician? Sleight of hand is it's the number one quality of being a magician. You've got to be deceptive in everything you do in order to be a successful magician.
Well, even in football, to set up your defense a certain way is deception as well.
You took the words right out of my mouth. Okay, so you put a man in motion to try to get the defense thinking that, okay, the play is going this way, when in reality it's going that way. Is that a lie? See, I think that there we go again. We need to understand what sin is. Sin is lying. Sin is adultery. Sin is fornication. Sin is murder. All murder is killing, but not all killing is murder. All lying is deception, but not all deception is lying.
Yeah, if people think all killing is murder, that's why some pro-life people actually are against capital punishment. But we see clearly that's not God's view of it.
Yeah. Paul says if you're a magician and you claim it as supernatural power, that would be like, well, sure, it would be. Okay. Sure, absolutely. Truth and Reason says Rahab was also a harlot. She was never justified for being a harlot, but she was forgiven through faith, by the way. She was I got the hiccups. Justified by faith.
Yeah. Well, the rest of what he says is actually very good.
Yeah,
so
we don't
apply to this point.
We don't have to condone her actions, but we do need to accept her repentance. God forgave her when she was rescued. Yes, we are not expected to justify her lie. Yeah, and again, I really just like if a thief broke into my house the other night. I had my granddaughters there staying the night with us. A thief breaks into my house. They hide. I know where they're hiding. The thief wants to know if there's anybody else in the house. You know, what do I say? Do I say, yeah, my granddaughter's in there hiding I've got to be forthright, you know, in order to be honest. Yes, they're in there hiding under the bed. And no, look, I'm going to try to deceive that thief into thinking I'm the only one there. And that's a good thing. I am not going to say that it's lying to an evil, wicked person trying to kill me and my grandchildren. That's not lying. It's simply not lying. I think that's an important distinction to make. God also sent strong delusion that they should believe the lie.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what we need to keep in mind. That's kind of like 1 Kings 22 and 2 Thessalonians 2. Joshua, what he said in Joshua 6, when it was time to save Rahab's family, he said, "Only Rahab the harlot shall live, she and all who are with her in the house, because she hid the messengers that we sent." It wasn't because of lying. It wasn't because she was a harlot.
She hid the messengers.
She hid the messengers.
Now, part of that hiding,
and that was on the basis of her faith, by the way.
Sure,
that's the reason she helped them, because she knew that Israel was going to win, and she put a lie to the 10 spies who came back 40 years earlier, 38 and a half years later, earlier, when they all said, "Oh, there's no way we're grasshoppers in their sight." No. They feared when they heard what happened in Egypt. They feared when they heard the crossing of the Red Sea. And 40 years later, they're still fearing. Mm-hmm. That's what Rahab said. Yeah. And their doors were all locked because they're on their threshold. So all that was not true. But that's what the Israelite spies, the 10 of them, projected, because they were grasshoppers in their own sight.
And I do believe that murder, I think we can see that. I think most all of us can see and understand that, if you are intentionally setting out to murder an innocent person, that murder, that's 100% of the time is wrong. Okay. Protection. If somebody's breaking into my house and there's a battle, they're trying to take my life, and in self-defense, I shoot them, that's not murder. We know that.
Yeah, that's in the law of Moses, chapter 23, is clearly not murder.
It's not murder.
Self-defense is not murder.
Is it killing?
Yes.
Okay, but it's not murder.
No.
Okay, I think the same thing is true when it comes to lying. Okay, there is the intent to deceive, and to deceive into that, thinking that which is wrong and contrary to what is truth, and it is therefore damaging not only to the one that is being spoken to, but others as well who may believe that lie. So,
well, I still find lying causing more problems than it solves most of the time.
All the time, and lying does cause problems. But that's my point.
Well, even deception. But an example of that, when Michal makes an image and puts it in the bed, like David is, in bed, to deceive Saul's soldiers that were sent to go kill David. But she let him out, just like Saul was let out in a basket over the wall at Damascus. It's a very similar escape. But she then says, well, he forced me to do that. He threatened my life to do it. Now, that was not true. And that kind of put him on the enemy list. Falsely, it was a false accusation. But the motive of Saul all along was envy. But so you had to be careful about even, being deceptive.
Yeah, I think Lee's got a good point here. We sometimes try to make everything black and white, but that's not how life is.
But when people believe a deception, there are consequences to it. And those consequences can fall on us as well.
Yeah, just because someone makes an accusation that someone's a liar does not mean that they are right. Exactly. And I've seen this too much in our Facebook group. Well, you're a liar. Somebody may say something that's wrong. And Jeremy even made this point earlier, and I agree with Jeremy. There are people who believe wrong. They've been taught wrong, and they repeat what they've been taught. That does not make them a liar. Okay? What they're saying is false. It's not true. But they are not a liar. Why? Because lying requires intent to deceive. Now, when you present the truth to them and they reject the truth and they continue to repeat that now, which they know is a lie, what are they doing? You see, now
they're knowingly
repeating that, which they know is wrong. So I think that's an important distinction to make. But it doesn't mean just because you call somebody a liar doesn't mean that you're right in calling them a liar. Nor does it make them a liar just because they're saying something that is not true. They may be honestly deceived, and they simply need to be taught. So when we say you're a liar, how is that going to help the situation? Really?
Yeah. No.
I don't think it will help it at all.
Yeah.
Jeremy says a lie never contains less than someone saying something they believe to be false, and for the purpose of deceiving someone. The person who with dementia is already deceived and cannot be removed from that deception and conceivably can't be pushed further into that deception. If you don't believe you will make the deception worse, you can use language within the context of their deception to convey other necessary ideas. You can, after all, only speak to them in the language they will understand. And trying to convince somebody who is in that condition of the truth, it's not going to be successful. It's just going to make things worse because of the mental capacity that they have.
My mother-in-law had that situation, and her husband passed away. I mean, she went to the funeral, and we even sat down, and Harold told her, your dad passed away, and he did, really, and that was about all there was to it. But then sometime later, say, well, where's Tommy? Well, we just learned to say, he's not here right now. Mm-hmm. That was sufficient.
That's
for most of the time.
Exactly. That's
and
exactly right.
She was not argumentative. I mean, she was actually a very pleasant person, and it was sad that personality was still gone. But in a way, that personality was still there too.
I think that's a good point. Paul says, "Do you think it would be okay to tell the robber that you're the only one in the house when there are others hiding in the house? It would be okay to cause and say something that would cause that robber to think that I am the only one in the house." Okay. And whatever you come up with in that moment to save those lives, that just like I said, if somebody's coming in trying to kill me and I use a knife to defend myself and protect myself, in a fight, they're trying to kill me and I kill them instead, our laws recognize that's not murder. And so if somebody's coming in trying to kill me and my children and my grandchildren and my wife, my family, and I am not letting them do that, that's not lying. That is my point. That's not lying. Let's define lying. If I were to encourage them to believe that there's nobody else in the house, then that in and of itself is not lying. If I say, you know, you see me, that's all that's here. Do with me as you will, but I'm going to protect my children and my grandchildren. I don't believe that's lying. Jeremy says, probably not would be my answer, but you could probably say you don't know of anyone being in the house if they could have left. You know, no, they ran out. I told them to run out the back door. I told them to leave. Or maybe you say something more along the lines of, there's not supposed to be anyone else in this house that I'm aware of. So, yeah, let's make a word salad and throw out there. Let's be a politician about this. Let's be a politician about that. That's not a good thing to do. Don't be a politician, because all politicians do what? We know what all politicians are. But they learn how to spin and twist and, yes, lie. That's not what we should be. But we should.
I bet Rahab had a lot of experience lying.
Probably.
As far as, a wife looking for her husband,
yeah.
So,
I mean, but whatever you say, Paul, if you say, yes, they're in there hiding under the bed in the second bedroom. Tell me how that's a good thing. I'm being forthright. I'm being honest. Is that what the Lord requires of you? No, that's not what the Lord requires of you. Again, lying requires intent. It is an intent to deceive. It is an intent to deceive something or someone, to believe that which we know is not true, for their harm and for our harm, for other people's harm, anybody else's harm, anyone's harm. I think that needs to be in the definition as we understand it, just like murder. I keep coming back to this, but I think that's the perfect parallel. Not all killing is murder. Not all deception is lying. That's my point. So we are out of time. And Jeremy says, the point being, there's always an out, but let's say they're not. Stephen maybe could have lied to get out of this situation. He didn't. And his example serves us. Jeremy, I am glad that you brought that one up, because let me emphasize something here. When it comes to me defending the truth and the faith and my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, I must always stand for the truth. Deceiving people into thinking that I'm something other than a Christian would be a lie.
Well, especially just to save your life.
Sure, absolutely. And so, what's the motivation for doing that?
But the devil can be very deceptive and maybe convince a Christian to think, well, what good am I going to be as a Christian that's killed for the faith? I need to stay alive so I can help reach other people. But you're compromising your faith by doing that. It's kind of like the guy who wants to run for office to go to Washington and change things. But in order to change things, he's got to fit in, and he becomes a bit the part of the problem instead of part of the solution. And the same thing is true with that rationale. Well, actually, the person who dies for the faith shows how great that faith is worth dying for. And that led to more conversions than those that covered it up just to stay alive.
So to deny the faith would bring harm to the faith itself.
Exactly.
And so I must be honest and truthful when it comes to who I am as a child of God, and standing for the truth.
The value of our human physical life, what is it in comparison to the value of a spiritual life?
Be faithful unto death, and I will give you the crown of life. And these Christians, I mean, they would watch the Roman soldiers who would come in and drag a whole family out of their home and tell a father that either you confess Caesar, you bow to Caesar, You burn a little pinch of incense to Caesar and deny Jesus, or else I'm fisting to kill your family in front of your eyes.
Yeah, and I don't really mean it, so it's okay to do that.
That's right.
That's a
Cross your fingers and stick them behind your back and do that. And the Lord will forgive me, right? No,
that's devilish doctrine.
The need to be faithful to the Lord and to stand firm.
Yeah, and
that's what we must do.
And actions speak louder than words.
Sure,
when it comes to truth. So,
I think that we do need to understand some things, and it's not always. And to Lee's point earlier, you talk about black and white, and that's where we want everything to be, and everything is not always like that. So I believe my false statement will advance the cause of good. Does that mean it is not a lie? If you're, what false statement are you talking about? I think that would be an important, if my false statement, if I'm intentionally deceiving someone, for example, with false information to give me an opportunity to speak or to be in a position of authority and power, I've falsified my documents, my resume, in order to be in a position where I can do a greater good for the cause of Christ. That's lying. Okay, you're doing that to better yourself and put yourself in that position. Right? Am I right about that? I mean, shall we do good? Shall we do evil that good may come? Isn't that what Paul said in Romans chapter 3?
No, we can't do that.
We can't do that. Okay, so that's not what I'm saying. There is a difference between lying, just like there's a difference between lying and not being completely forthright and truthful about everything that would bring people harm. Okay, there is a difference in that. That's not lying. Just like killing someone in self-defense or protecting the life of someone else. That's not murder. Okay, let's understand that distinction. I think that's an important distinction to make. Lee says, I'm confident that the Lord would understand self-preservation is allowed in some instances, just as he is merciful and gracious, I believe, to those who suffer from mental illness and diseases.
Yeah.
And
well,
you're not responsible for that which you cannot control.
Yeah. In some instances, perhaps, but I would say more so when you look at the pattern of the Christians in the New Testament, they're warned that they're going to they have to be willing to give their lives. We're to be willing to give our lives every day sacrificially. We're to be sacrificial anyway. They're not our own anyway.
Mm-hmm. Did Rahab do good in protecting the spies?
Yes. That's the one thing that she was rewarded for, was hiding the spies. And the other thing about that is giving them instructions where to hide for 3 days. That's a foreshadowing of the resurrection of Jesus, by the way, along with many others.
Yeah.
And she's the great grandmother of Jesus. She's in the genealogy in Matthew 1.
Yeah, it turned out good discussion. I do understand. Listen, again, all lying is sin. If you're telling a lie, if you are lying, that includes white lies. White lies are lies. If they're lies, they're lies.
All liars.
All lying is sin.
All liars will have their part in the lake of fire.
But not all. All lying is deception, but not all deception is lying. I think that's correct. I think that is true. Thank you, everybody, for being with us today. Appreciate good discussion. Appreciate the comments. Here's one that I did miss.
I like what Jeremy said. Oh, that
irony. Judas was the only disciple who told the truth
at Jesus' capture. He's the only one that spoke of the disciples, as far as I know.
Yeah. Or set it up so that you can tell the truth. Tell your family in advance, hey, I'm just telling you this so I can say I said this to you. At any time there is an intruder, run out the back or front. I'll tell you the real plan at the time, then you tell the robber. I told my family if there was an intruder to run out the back. I hope they are not in danger now. Yeah, I mean, there's a way to get around it, but I mean, again, what's the definition of lying? I do think we need to properly interpret it or define it. Just like, what's the correct definition of murder?
Yeah, but what Jeremy's talking about, you still have plausible deniability as to whether or not they followed your instructions.
Absolutely. Yeah, plausible. Boy, there we go, becoming more political.
Yeah, I know.
Plausible deniability.
Well, some people, because their conscience is so ingrained on their facial expressions, their eye movement will give away if they're telling the truth or not. And so some people are not good liars in that sense. So if you at least have that might be able to help you to be convincing.
Yeah.
When you're not used to saying something untrue.
Right. Lying is self-preservation. Lying is to slander somebody else. Lying to promote false doctrine and false teaching. Lying for any reason is wrong. To do that, to do something, to say things that will save the life of my loved ones or members of the Lord's church or, anybody else. Saving lives is a good thing. So
yeah, but lying to preserve self
is wrong.
If you look at examples in the Bible, like Abraham and Sarah doing it didn't turn out well.
No, lying to preserve self reputation,
or Michal with David, that didn't turn out well either.
No, it didn't. And I agree. I believe David lied. I mean, Abraham lied, and I believe that he was wrong in doing that. But that was for what purpose? Why was he saying those things?
Well, the second time he did it, that showed a lack of faith in God.
There you go. That's exactly right. That's exactly what it showed. So he should have had more faith and trust in God.
Well, even the first time that we read about, he should have had more faith because he didn't have his seed. He didn't have seed yet. I mean, he had no descendants yet. So he shouldn't have been afraid of Pharaoh killing him to take Sarah for himself.
Of course, there was some truth to what he said.
Yeah, it was half true.
Yeah. That didn't make it right either. But anyway, good discussion. Thank you very much. Are you talking about the sister thing? Yeah.
Uh-huh.
See, she was his half sister. So, okay, we're going to have to cut it off out of time. I've got other things I've got to go do today. Paul says a common form of lying is when people jump to conclusions about others outside of good faith.
Well, especially if they share that opinion about those people to others.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but they themselves are deceived if they jump to conclusions. Yeah, but when they tell others that, then it becomes slander.
Yeah, well, slander is a form of lying, and that's
ad hominem attacks.
Yep. That's lying. It's
a carnal weapon. Paul called it in 2 Corinthians 10:3.
Jeremy, if that's it, then the passage explains him as believing it. It can still be wrong, even if true, to say it. That's exactly. All right. Thank you, everybody. Lord willing, we will be back on Monday afternoon. Lord willing, hope that you can also join us. Appreciate everybody who's been with us today. Good discussion. Not sure that everybody is 100% in agreement with everything that's been said, but I would like to encourage you to realize and understand this. Lying is lying, and it's sinful 100% of the time. Just like murder is murder, and it's sinful 100% of the time. It's the unlawful taking of life that makes something murder. Okay, it's the unlawful deception. It is the misleading people to believe that which is contrary to truth and righteousness for their harm. So thank you, everybody. Lord willing, we'll be back on Monday. Till then, may God bless you. Oh, if you are in Central Arkansas, please join us on Sunday morning as Bible study. We will be coming together at 9 a.m. for Bible study, and again at or 10 a.m. for worship. And also check out our website, please. All of the information about us is found on our website, bryantchurchofchrist.com. You have our meeting times and all of the latest lessons. And so anything that we can do to help you and guide you towards a better understanding of Scripture, we certainly would love to do that. So take advantage of our website. Thank you, everybody. Until Monday, may God bless you. Hope that you have a great rest of the day. Till Monday, may God bless.
Just as I am without one plea, but that thy blood was shed for me, and that thou bidst me come to thee, O Lamb of God, I come, just as I am, and waiting not to rid my soul of one dark blot, to thee whose blood can cleanse each spot, O Lamb of God, I come, I come broken to be mended, I come wounded to be healed, I come desperate to be rescued, I come empty to be filled, I come guilty to be pardoned by the blood of Christ the Lamb, and I'm welcome with open arms, praise God, just as I am. Just as I am, I would be lost, but mercy and grace my freedom bought. And now to glory in your cross, O Lamb of God, I come, I come broken to be mended, I come wounded to be healed, I come desperate to be rescued, I come empty to be filled, I come guilty to be pardoned by the blood of Christ the Lamb, and I'm welcome with open arms, praise God, just as I am. Praise God, just as I am.